It's really nice to see you, especially in this type of hosting capacity. It's awesome. As Margot mentioned, my name is Vicky Mackie, and I am the SVP of Talent Operations at Toptal. Toptal is the world's largest fully remote workforce. I'll get more into what that actually means in just a moment. But today I have the pleasure of speaking to you all about how to build a world-class pipeline. Before we dive in, I want to explore what is a talent pipeline anyway. Every company has initiatives and projects that have different talent needs. Some are short, some are long, but many require specific technical skills. Your talent pipeline is how you resource those projects. It's how you get the talent at the right time. But as Margot mentioned, this can be really challenging, especially in the current environment where we are seeing a turbulent labor market and skill shortages across the entire tech industry. Now, this is something that my team and I think about all the time. We live and breathe tech talent hiring and staffing at Toptal. We help companies prepare and manage their talent pipelines every single day. Toptal supports our clients by matching them with the high caliber global talent from our vetted network. And as you can see, we are everywhere. We have over 7,000 members across 140 plus different countries. And we've seen some pretty massive growth, 175% growth in engagements and a 200% growth in talent applications since 2019. So why is this important right now? As I mentioned, it is a tough time for both talent and leaders in tech. We're all navigating the challenging labor market and even a potential global economic slowdown. Despite this, 77% of companies are facing talent shortages still in 2023. And CIOs are reporting a rising competition of qualified talent. These shortages are only expected to get even worse over the next decade, as you can see on the left-hand side here. Those of us who are in hiring positions need to be ready to navigate this new environment. So I want to share a couple of key points and learnings that I've had about managing your tech pipeline. Great companies who do this well consider this a three-piece puzzle. The first is planning ahead, and the second and third is really balancing full-time workers and flexible talent. Many leaders only think about the full-time workers aspect, so I want to spend some time diving into planning ahead and how to leverage flexible talent. Let's start with data-driven planning. So let's say you need to hire a React developer or a cybersecurity expert. What are your options? You could hire and recruit someone, you could upskill someone, or you could use a freelance talent. But we all know that finding the top talent with those in-demand skills is not easy. And we know upskilling someone can take a really long time. That's why it's really important to give yourself as much lead time as possible. You should be taking time today to think about what your pipeline and what your needs are a year from now. Making sure you're doing the right analyses to look at what skills you think you'll need in 6 to 12 months. So consider your company strategy or vision. What are the OKRs and projects that you think need to get done to achieve those? Then look at your workforce. Where are your skill gaps? What do you think you'll need to get those projects complete? Then you'll need to prioritize those skills. Look at the areas that you think will be differentiators for you and your team and build those into your talent pipeline. We are constantly doing this type of forecasting at Toptal, which brings me to my next point. Why should you leverage flexible talent? Now, this isn't new. I think most companies are already using freelance labor to some extent. And in fact, 77% of companies are actually intending on increasing the number of freelance hiring that they're doing over the next 5 years, according to an MBO Partners report. They also found that these were the top 4 reasons that companies hire flexible workers today. The first one is meeting temporary workload needs. This is really the ability to flex your capacity up and down as much as you need. Imagine the timeline for the critical project that you're responsible for just got moved up a month. Flexible talent is able to dive in and help you get there as soon as you need. The second is increasing or boosting your productivity. What if this project is of new complexity, new scope, something that you've never done before? Flexible talent who has already done this type of work will bring the expertise to make sure that you get the solution you need. The third is to get things done faster. What if you're launching a new initiative that you need new team members for? Hiring a full-time team can take 3 to 6 months at least, probably longer for them to really get up to speed. But flexible talent can get in and get things done far faster. And then finally, as I mentioned previously, you're really able to access those skills that are in short supply, especially if you're an advocate and support remote work. Let's say you need a professional AI engineer. You're no longer bound to the region or geography that your company's in to make sure you get the right talent that you need. I want to share an example of a client that came to Toptal to partner on one of their most critical business problems. Bridgestone came and asked for help to design an app, something that their global workforce could use to track processes and inventory. Ease of use is their number one goal. As I mentioned, a global workforce. This means that the app needed to be easy to use across different cultures, languages, and geographies. It can be really challenging to find talent with that type of skill. So we tapped our global network and we matched Bridgestone with an international team of UX and UI designers. By leveraging that flexible component of their talent pipeline, Bridgestone was able to get this type of challenging problem done really well. Now, I've spoken a lot about different impacts or positive outcomes from hiring flexible workers, but the MBO Partners report also found that there are two main pain points to working with flexible talent if you're not doing it well. The first is ensuring work quality, and the second is finding the workers with the skills that you need. So how do you solve those problems? Let's start with the first one on the left, ensuring work quality. Much like a full-time hire, you need to make sure that the flexible talent you're working with has been vetted and tested. You can get that by partnering with an external talent network who does that vetting and testing on your behalf. Some, like Toptal, actually also offer matching for a more efficient and curated experience. You can also get vetted and tested talent by creating your own database of freelancers. This is something we're actually seeing some of the larger consulting firms doing and even turning them into more of their own internal staffing platforms. As for finding workers with the needed skills on the right-hand side, you really need the largest talent pool possible, ideally even global. That means really supporting and advocating for remote work so that you can really increase your reach and give yourself the best chance to find the people with the skills that you need. So if you recall what I mentioned earlier in the presentation, I said a healthy talent pipeline consists of 3 different points: managing your planning ahead with data, full-time workers, and flexible talent. Rose here is actually an example of the type of flexible talent that you get access to when you leverage borderless and remote hiring. She has over 16 years of experience. She has been a project manager, an entrepreneur, a teacher, a mom, a developer, and even a government official. She currently lives in Ankara, Turkey, but she is supporting one of our large automotive clients in Sweden as a lead full stack engineer. Because of Rose's professional experience, every project she touches, she's able to provide a positive impact. Companies that don't leverage the flexible or freelance talent are missing out on world-class talent like Rose. That brings me to the end. I think that we all know that our companies and our bottom lines are really only as strong as our people. With the skill shortages I mentioned and a challenging economic environment, it's more important now than ever that tech leaders are really deliberate about managing their talent pipeline. If you are able to plan carefully ahead and find the right balance of flexible and full-time workers, you can make sure that you'll have the right talent that you need to set you up for success. At Toptal, we believe that the future of tech depends on flexible, on-demand access to the best talent in the world. And with that, I think we can open it up to some Q&A.
Thank you so much, Vicky. I know there's many people who are exploring this kind of side of things, but may not have kind of the understanding yet. So a lot of the points you made to kind of say, okay, here's some ways you can do it, I think are really great. One of the questions that came through in the chat was, how can organizations balance short-term and long-term talent needs in their pipeline?
Yeah, I think that all comes back to the topic of planning ahead, right? I think the more that you're able to really understand the skills that you'll need over the next, like I said, 6 to 12 months, that should get you a big part of the way there in terms of what you want to solve for in your talent pipeline. But of course, none of us can actually predict the future. You can't predict external things that change or how much a specific skill or type of talent might be in demand. And so I think that that's where the flexible talent aspect comes in. So maybe if you're 80% there with your full-time planning, your longer term planning, then your short term planning can be supplemented by someone from a freelance talent network. I think you're on mute.
Of course, we have glitches sometimes. Here we are. Vicky, thank you for that first answer there. We do have another question here as well. For which roles does using flexible talent make the most sense? So you talked about short-term, long-term, but are there specific roles where it kind of lands a little bit stronger?
Yeah, I think it really depends on a few things: the size of your organization and the type of project or problem that you're trying to solve. So if you recall one of the examples I gave, you're working on a project and your timeline just got moved up and you need to quickly add capacity with someone who's already up to speed, who's done something like that before, has the right expertise, especially in a technical situation. That would be a great example of a role where freelance talent would be helpful. But what I've actually also seen really beneficial is with some of the smaller companies who are looking for more of that strategic guidance. And so they're looking for someone like a fractional CIO or a fractional CTO to help provide that that knowledge that maybe that type of company wouldn't have access to.
Yep. And as you were explaining that, Vicky, another question came through here too of how can organizations ensure that flexible talent is aligned with their company culture and values?
That's a great thing, I think, about leveraging a specific, a talent network, because these talent have done this before. They have been plugged into organizations, being able to understand how to work and leverage that type of team dynamic. And so I think what would be most important to make this work is being able to advocate for remote work, right? Like if you're encouraging it, if you have the right culture and metrics essentially to support that, then that makes it really easy. And then B, just making sure that you leverage a freelance worker or talent that actually has done this before, because it won't be new to them. They'll know exactly the things that they'll need to do to make sure they fit in with your culture.
Vicky, I don't know if this question resonates with you, but we can try to ask for clarification if not. But someone's asking, how can this get vetted? Does that land with you for what we were just talking about?
As in the talent that you're working with, or I'll interpret it as that. But if you think about, as I mentioned, one of the problems that some companies had with working with flexible talent is not having, the right, making sure that the talent had the right skill that they needed. And so there are different ways that you can vet it. You can partner, like I mentioned, you could partner with a talent network. Toptal, for example, does all of the screening on behalf of their clients. And that really ensures that we're bringing in the most expert folks into our network. And then others, if you want to do the vetting yourself, of course, that requires more resource, more investment, but is also an option.
Great. And Vicky, the questions keep coming in here. So thank you for your clear, concise answers. We have time for, I think, one or two more. What tips can you give organizations to manage the potential risks and liabilities that might be associated with flexible talent? And they mentioned things such as like intellectual property or confidentiality concerns they might have.
Yeah, I think, again, I would say there are a few ways. First, partnering with some sort of network that has that agreement in place with your freelance talent makes it far easier for you. You don't have to worry as much about the exact contracts and agreements that you're signing with the freelance talent. And then once you've built that relationship with a specific partner, it's something that you can leverage forever, right? You can constantly pick that network. You can look for people that you need. Once it's established and you've really set up those initial guidelines, it will be an investment for your talent pipeline for many years to come.
Great. Okay, and then question from me here to you, Vicky. What's been the most challenging for you as you've been a part of building a talent pipeline?
I think for me, it kind of goes back to of course, the planning ahead, right? I think that I definitely appreciate the benefits of being able to take the time to really think strategically about what talent needs I will need or I will have in the next year or two. But as I mentioned before, I can't predict what the global economic situation is going to look like in 6 to 12 months. If I could, that would be amazing, but many of us can't. Regardless, having a plan I think is helpful, but being able to stay flexible and being able to pivot when you see changes in the marketplace, I think is most challenging for me, because as someone who loves to stick with a plan, I need to make sure that I am able to stay balanced and take in new information as I get it.
Thank you, Vicky. And I know many people on the call, including myself, are planners ourselves, so I'm sure that resonated with us. Thank you so much for answering all these questions today. If we do find more, we will pass them your way. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you again for joining us, Vicky.
Thank you so much, Margot.